This hurricane. New York City, which has a lot of those people, is prepping for a direct hit by Hurricane Irene. Don't know whether it'll happen or not, but they are preparing for it. Mayor Michael Bloomberg deciding today whether or not to evacuate low-lying areas of the city. Here's what has him concerned. The orange area, take a look at it. There you go. The orange area that could flood from any hurricane that comes near the city. The yellow area, a Category 2 hurricane, could affect that. So we're talking about a good chunk of lower Manhattan and the boroughs that could be flooded by Irene. So is the city ready? Stephen Flynn is an emergency preparedness expert. He's the author of The Edge of Disaster, Rebuilding a Resilient Nation. Stephen Flynn, thank you for being with us. Let me ask you this. When we're talking about flooding in parts of Manhattan, are we talking about a few inches of water? Are we talking about needing rowboats to get around? What are we talking about?
Well, it's a little bit of all of the above, but the basic issue is that Manhattan is an island, and so as that storm comes in, if it pushes water up the harbor, up to the Harlem River and the East River, it's going to inundate low portions of Manhattan. A lot of Manhattan was filled, basically. They made more of an island over the years, and so it's fairly exposed. And the basic issue is, first, New York City has a world-class emergency planners. I mean, they're the best in the game. But the city is out of practice when it comes to hurricanes. And just like as we learned just on Tuesday with the earthquake, if you're out of practice, your skills tend to get a little rusty. Everybody ran out of buildings on Tuesday after the earthquake.
Right.
That's the exact opposite of what they're supposed to do. So time is always your ally before a disaster. It's always your enemy after a disaster. So using the time now to get prepared is key. The mayor is clearly on top of that. But this is an all-hands evolution. When you get that many people packed in a little space,
yep,
as dependent as they are on the transportation, everybody's got to get informed and get better prepared.
Right, and that's a big issue here, because even if it does end up being a couple inches of water at your feet, we got a whole bunch of tunnels underneath New York where subways run, the tunnels that get us to New Jersey or to Long Island, those could be flooded.
Absolutely. The basic issue, of course, you get water on the streets going to go down, a little gravity there, and it's going to fill up the subway stations. And New York works because of the transportation networks it has. Another real issue that I'm concerned about, though, is Long Island. Long Island, if it were a state unto itself, would be the 13th biggest state. Mm-hmm. It has 7.5 million people and really crammed together, about 5,400 per square mile. And it's an island. The only way to get off of it and get onto it is through the two boroughs and Queens and the Bronx. And so what we know is we're going to have a lot of outages. This isn't a mammoth storm, likely to be a mammoth storm in terms of lots of death and destruction, but what it is going to do is be very disruptive, and people really have to be in a position to camp out.
So yeah, so that's basically it. The stuff we're talking about: the getting the water, getting a generator if you're in if you need one, if you're in a house on Long Island or in New Jersey. Let me just ask you about the buildings. People worry about the buildings in New York. If we're talking about a Category 2 or even a Category 3 hurricane, are we worried that windows are going to blow out and debris is going to fall on people as they're walking in New York?
You really have to get up into that high 2-3 range before perhaps some of the older buildings might be facing that. But generally, the basic rule is this: if you live in a high rise, you need to get inside away from a window. And the taping issue, don't get involved with that, obviously, in a big building. But what you would want at the height of the storm to be secure is go to a place where you can't see a window. And if you take care of that, likely you're going to ride out, particularly for this storm. We're not going to probably see that damage. But it is the other basics in a high rise is if you have a patio or terrace out there, got to get that furniture inside, because that would be really dangerous for people below, and it can be used as a missile and essentially serve as a missile and hit your windows and so forth.
And as John Zarella says, people always think about candles, but if you get your windows blown out and your candle falls over, you could be dealing with another problem. So flashlight's better than candles. Stephen, good to see you. Thank you so much. Stephen Flynn
I just want to make one other thing, which is medicines. And very important. Anybody with a chronic illness, make sure you get plenty of medicine, because it may be hard to get to the hospital.
Very good advice. Thank you for that. Stephen Flynn is the author of The Edge of Disaster, Rebuilding a Resilient Nation. Carol?